Megan,
Greg, how's it going?
good. How are you?
Good.
Thanks for coming in to chat. Hey, so I wanted to bring you in. I wanted to talk to you because, first off, you're a very interesting case study for me because you were a very successful real estate agent before you moved to Chicago. So I want to get into that in a little bit. But before we do that, I'd love to just kind of hear about who are you? Tell me a little bit about your background, where you're coming from, let's call it the welcoming into Chicago. What has been going on up to this point in your life?
Yes, thank you. So I'm Meaghan McCarthy, and I have been in real estate now I'm coming up on 6 years, and I worked in the Iowa market in Des Moines, Iowa, where I'm originally from. And then this year I decided to make the big move to Chicago. I've got a network of family and friends here, so I was ready for a change, and I decided to make the big move.
So I'm really curious, like how different are both the markets?
They're a lot different. I would say the way different aspects of the market, like of how us realtors work, are different. Buying and selling is the same everywhere. Of course, it's at a much larger scale here in Chicago, but kind of the way that us realtors work and how a transaction works is a lot different here in Illinois. And of course, one of the biggest differences is coming from a non-attorney state to an attorney state. So that is one big difference that I've noticed.
For the better or the worse? Did you like being kind of pseudo attorney back in Des Moines?
No, it's very nice to have attorneys. You just have another person in the transaction that works closely with our clients, and it's a great relationship that we have with our attorneys that we work with, and the liability is a lot.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
a lot less liability here in Chicago for us realtors.
I've never worked in a non-attorney state. That's just always blown my mind when it comes to like the way. I mean, obviously, like you kind of just like come up with it. There's no other options, and you just have to like roll with it. But I mean, like an average realtor is pretty damn sloppy, and I can't imagine it gets any better over there because probably average is average. To then add like like stuff for them to do, it just terrifies me. I can't even imagine.
I was writing lots of addendums and paperwork that
Right.
is
You shouldn't be doing that.
shouldn't be doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a buying and selling is a big deal. Of course, we know that. And just some of the things that we were writing, not willy-nilly, but
Yeah.
we were handling the entire transaction.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to be here in an attorney state.
Yeah.
It's a lot different.
Good,
So.
good. So what is interesting to me, because a lot of brokers that want to get into real estate, right? They are like, what do I do? You almost had like a perfect scenario where like you had a lot of success with where you were operating. And then you were like, all right, if I was to do it again, how would I do it? And then you got that chance in Chicago. So I guess like for a realtor that's either thinking about getting into the business very early on in their career, or just somebody that is thinking about how to get better at what they do, for someone that just had a fresh perspective, right, on how to redo something that you were already great at, were there some things you did in the beginning of restarting in Chicago that you would have never known to do if you didn't have the experience before?
I definitely think that's a great question. I think, I had a great mentor back home, and surrounding yourself with really successful people who really focus on daily tasks and good habits that continue to, that help you grow your business,
Yeah.
so we have a steady pipeline, so to speak.
Right.
So good activities like that every day that just help you, build your business and make sure you're staying busy and making those relationships, finding new clients, all sorts of things like that. That's something that you go to real estate school and you learn all this stuff, and then you get licensed and put into the real world, and you don't, all these habits that you need to have to be
Right.
successful, and all the things that nobody tells you should be doing, so.
Yeah. Give
Yeah.
me like some must-have habits in your mind for any broker that wants to be successful.
I would say some must-have habits would be follow up. Of course, follow up is really important with any sort of potential clients, buyers, sellers. I would say organization, keeping that database of clients, so past and present, making sure you're keeping those relationships. That's very important. And I'm trying to think. Let's see.
Well, like if you're looking at your day to day today, right? Actually, no, let's just start from like when you just started in the beginning. Do you remember those early few days? I mean, it wasn't like that long ago of like, all right, yes, I'm getting leads coming in. You know, we have a good leads program at Vesta. But outside, you're not a person just waits for your phone to ring. What were those things, those proactive activities that you remember doing that really kind of started the engine running?
Yeah, so definitely have done all sorts of things. Like we did neighborhood, we'd go cold, or we would cold call and garden neighborhoods, so to speak, and find neighborhoods, go door knocking, all sorts of things. Those are kind of old
So why do you
school.
just call it gardening and not farming?
Oh, we've called it gardening.
That right there is an yeah,
Gardening, yeah,
yeah.
because you
That's
water it and make it
that's a
grow.
Des
Like,
Moines saying. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I'm gonna call it gardening
gardening,
from
yeah,
now on. Yeah,
garden a
you're
neighborhood.
growing the flowers versus farming. Yeah,
Exactly, yeah.
sounds
So,
more pleasurable.
yeah, definitely that. And then networking is super important, and just touching base with people that you grew up with and
Yeah.
in your network that you've known your whole life, reaching out, making phone calls, text
Yep.
messages, reaching out. Hey, this is random, but are you looking to buy or sell? I have somebody that's interested in your neighborhood, things like
Yeah.
that. So,
How do buyers right now? What would you say? Like what is your average buyer looking for? Like, are they? What are their concerns? What are their? Right now it's a very difficult market, right? So you're working with a lot of buyers. What's top of mind right now for them?
I think obviously interest rates is a super hot topic. It has been since last fall, since they
Mm-hmm.
went up. But I'm getting over the interest rate conversation because we're still going to need to buy and sell real estate. I would say I think a lot of buyers, to combat those high interest rates, they're putting a lot of money down, like in any transaction, and so they're looking. I think maybe we have some more serious buyers right now because they're putting that 20% down payment into a house, whereas in back in the day, 2020, we had people getting into houses for no money down, and
Right.
so I think that they're not caliber of buyer, but buyers are looking for. They're more serious right now, especially with these high interest rates. They've got enough stacked against them that it's
Yeah.
interesting.
I'd say right now, buyers, they need more money. It's more expensive to own a home, right?
Exactly.
The negative news is overwhelming from the positive news. So anybody that's choosing to buy right now, I would absolutely agree with you, is a very serious buyer, right? But with serious buyers comes a lot of, I'd say, baggage almost, right? Because they just come a lot more educated. They come a lot more with the right questions, right?
Yeah.
So like when somebody asks you, how is the market? Have you changed or prepped in a different way? Like, do you have your go-to speech on that? I'd love it. I'd love to hear it. How's the market, Megan?
For buyer, I would say it's steady. I think the market right now it's obvious, it ebbs and flows, and towards the Q4 you can see a slowdown a little bit just because we get busier, people get busier and weather changes, but there's still buyers out there, and I think prices have stabilized. We're not seeing huge increases in prices.
Right.
Definitely the spring market, who's to say what will happen in the spring market, but I mean, it's steady. It's
Yeah.
always steady here in Chicago and in the Midwest.
What I found with Chicago, right? The question of how's the market isn't a straight line answer,
Yeah.
right? It's a compartmentalized market,
Yeah.
right? So Chicago is a compartmentalized market. And what I mean by that is, depending on where you want to buy, it could be a buyer's market or it could be a seller's market,
Yeah.
right? So when you're talking about downtown condos right now, absolutely buyer's market, right?
Yeah.
There's fewer buyers that are looking to buy these high rise because you have the additional cost of HOAs, right? And then all of a sudden you're starting to actually see a lot of decrease in values over there, right? I'm having a very challenging time selling my condos there. However, if you have a single family home, right, that is in a good location and it's newer and whatnot, there's multiple offers still going on.
Yeah.
So it depends on what you're buying. It depends on where you're looking to buy, right? So that's why it's so important to use the right broker that knows all of these intricacies. And because we and you specifically work with so many buyers, right?
Yes.
You get such a lay of the land of where things ebbs and flows, right?
Yeah.
So that is I'd say one of your competitive advantages. And also you're just a shark and you just work so hard and you're always constantly like trying to better yourself.
Thank you.
So, when it comes to how many buyers are you working with right now?
I've got probably 6 right now
Like
that are
active, right?
active.
Like,
Yeah.
and like, are they all over the map? Like, because you just got a multi-unit under contract, you
Yep.
get condos under contract. So, kind of like, what are your specific kind of like segments that you're right now working with?
Yes, I've got a old friend from Iowa that I bought and sold 2 duplexes to him in Iowa. He's moving to
Oh,
Chicago,
that's
so I've
nice.
got
I
another.
love those
I
clients. It's
know.
just like chill. You're just having a good
Yes,
conversation. It's like
yeah.
there's no like you're not selling anything. You're
No,
just like
he's a
helping a friend.
yes. It's
My
good
favorite.
good to spend time with him and
Right.
just help him find his next
It's fun.
investment. He's a hustler investor, so he's a great client of mine. He's obviously looking for a multi-unit, and
Yeah.
then I've got a young family that's looking in the suburbs,
Okay.
and I've got 2 young families looking in the suburbs actually, and then another young girl that's looking for a condo downtown
Mm-hmm.
that she can live in for a year and eventually turn into an investment property. So,
Cool.
yeah, that's
So like all over the map.
yeah, a little bit of everything.
When somebody asks you where should I live, or because there's so many options,
Yeah.
right? Chicago has 77 neighborhoods,
Yep.
soon to be 78.
Yeah.
There are 240 suburbs, right? Every single one has its own unique thing, characteristic, values, right? Location. So how do you handle the question of like either somebody that doesn't know where they want to live, or they're like, Megan, where should we live?
Yeah. So since I'm relatively newer to
Yeah,
Chicago,
I'd love to hear that.
I every time I'm in a neighborhood that's new to me, I feel like I could find a reason to live there. Like I agree, that's why Chicago is so wonderful. There's so many different neighborhoods that have different flavors and different people, and so it's hard to narrow down just one. But I would say definitely rule of thumb. I like to tell my clients, like, where are you already living? Like, where are you living your life? Where are you going to work and church and work out and things like that?
Yeah.
Like, start there to see, because you don't want to completely change your life. A lot of times buyers aren't looking to completely get something totally new. Sometimes they are, but yeah, I kind of start where you're at now and then go from there. So
Yeah, I feel you.
yeah.
For me, it's the suburbs it's a treat to go to. Like
I agree.
right? Like, listen, I love the city. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
I love operating in the city. But when someone's like, let's go to Western Springs, I'm like, let's go.
I feel the exact same way because I'm so used to showing in the suburbs in Iowa for many years.
Oh, sure.
That my first house that I sold here was actually a 1970s ranch in the suburbs. And so I was like, oh, fitting, because
Yeah,
I'm
right?
so used to
Perfect.
selling
Welcome.
a ton of these
Yeah,
back in
right.
Iowa. And then so it's a nice, change from the big high rises downtown. So
Because you have so much experience with all this different type of real estate, when you walk into a house, what are the main things you're looking for in regards to value?
value. Well, it's different for a condo versus a single family home, but I just showed a house actually this last weekend in Irving Park that was a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bathroom home, single family home. It was really nicely updated. Kitchen and baths were updated, and my clients are a young family, and the size was fine. I always talk to my clients about growing into something and not outgrowing. And this house was totally updated. I mean, the kitchens and baths were updated, which is lovely. That's great. Move-in ready. Everybody wants that. But I pointed out, I was like, there is no spot for you to add another bathroom here. And if you're going to add another bathroom, it's going to be in the basement, and the ceilings are extremely low. And so
Yeah.
to me, I wanted to point out to them that there's going to be a stop sign where you can't add so much value. The house is already completely updated, and it's of course it's different for buyers if you want to be in the house for 5 years or forever. But I pointed out to them, like, just so you know, there's not a good. I mean, anything is possible, but
Right.
to make sense, it would not make sense to add a bathroom anywhere, and you couldn't turn this into a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. You're going to be stuck at 1.5 baths. So that was something I always like to point out, like, room to grow
Yeah.
in a home. So, which when I say that, it's physically room to grow, but
Yeah.
also add value.
So that is like such an experienced mindset when it comes to consulting buyers, because what that does is that gets people out of their heads of like, because everybody's so right now,
Yeah.
right? Like they have, how much money do I need to spend? Look at this specific, I'm going to be living in this house when I close. Like, what is this neighborhood? But people forget, right, that like this is also an investment, and our job, I tell this to my clients, you fall in love with the house. My job is to make sure that when you come to me in a few years, you're going to make money on the sale.
Exactly.
So I see it as an investment, right? So like for me, I'm always looking for those kind of things, right? And maybe somebody that's just starting out also is so in the moment because they're also just trying to pay bills and they're also trying to learn and they're like, they just don't know what they don't know. But I love that mindset because when it comes to like understanding, is this house, does it have room to grow? That is a huge value mark because if you can put money in and make a space more usable, right? If you make it more livable, that immediately adds value, right? Everyone's like, well, you know, I don't like carpet. I was like, you're not gonna buy this because of the carpet? Like, in my mind, I'm like, you're a few $1,000s away from a beautiful home, right? Have you noticed though, buyers today don't want to do any work?
I would say I always categorize my clients in two categories. You either can, first category, you can change out flooring, a backsplash, and paint, and that's it. And then the second category is clients who can move walls.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
I would say you're either one or the other. Like I can't hang a picture, so I'm in category one, a picture frame. I'm category one, but yeah, I would say it's just you either have people who, and a lot of buyers have family that's in the industry or
Yeah.
you know, contractors, stuff like that. I see that a lot, and of course with the days of DIY on TV and HGTV,
Yeah.
we see some buyers getting into that.
I want to say that, yes, those are two categories without a doubt, but I got to say there's a third category that has just popped out where like they don't want to do any work.
Yeah.
And it's where it's like, because when you're looking at what sells in the market right now, it has to be a perfect home or an insane deal.
Yeah.
There's no like in between anymore. Like I have a listing right now, beautiful 3-bedroom, high rise. It's like, yeah, it's not like the most modern of finishes, but it's nice. It's nice. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's got stone countertops. It's got wood floors. It's got like marble. Everything is fine. The colors aren't crazy. And the number one thing I get is this needs a gut rehab. I'm like, gut rehab? Like gut rehab is, there's a big difference between you want it to be updated to your own style and condition, which is 99% of the people that tell me that.
Yep.
Or there's for functionality, this house, nobody can live in here,
Yeah.
right? To anything in between is not a gut rehab.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, it's a livable, it's just not up to your standard. But also like buyers forget that they're not finding up to their standard because it's way up here. So when they're looking to buy, they're still looking for their standard and they're not getting consulted properly. We're like, listen, Joe,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
You're going to need to spend some money, but why don't we buy it at this really good rate? Because look at where the comps are at. You still have room to update, right? But people just don't want to update. They just don't want to do it. And it's so frustrating because it's such a short-term mindset. Because right now, if you put $1 in for updating, I bet you can get $3 back in regards to anything that you do if you buy correctly. And buyers just aren't getting that type of advice or they just don't want to do it. And that's, I think, so frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I try to really, in a showing, point out things that a buyer wouldn't realize, like the quality of cabinetry or trim work around windows and crown molding and things like that a buyer doesn't always understand, like the, not necessarily value because it's cosmetic, but the quality of it,
Yeah.
to show that like this is the difference between house A and house B. Like they
Right.
didn't have trim around the windows on house B, but it was all white and gray,
Right.
but you know, it had really quality woodwork in house A, you know, versus
What's crazy, and like my clients are always asking me what they need to put into their home to investment. It's like, oh, hey, Greg, my roof needs to be replaced. How much more money is this going to get me? I'm like, none, dude.
None.
Go replace your roof.
Yeah.
But that's like a $25,000-$30,000 investment.
Yep.
Where like a buyer won't give that to you. They're like, well, yeah, like
It needs
obviously
to have
it needs to have a roof, right? And like,
Yeah.
yeah, well, true. But it's really nice to have a new roof versus a 15, 20-year-old roof. But if like you change out carpet with like some cheap flooring, the buyer's like, this house is perfect.
Yes.
It's like, did you see that all the appliances are about to like, you know, go kaputs?
out?
Like, you
Yeah.
know, it's like, it's fine. I can get a home warranty for that. No, like that is real money. Like that is going to cost you more money versus just like some paint on the wall, right?
Yes.
But buyers, they won't change,
Yeah.
right? And that's why I talk to my sellers. If there's small fixes that they can do, it goes so far, because right now, if there is, I would say, $5,000 worth of work that's needed, a buyer in today's market is going to be like, I need $30,000 off.
Exactly.
And it's like, why?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I don't want to do it. And I'm like, okay, but like that doesn't mean that like
That the seller has to do it.
or that you're
yeah.
kicking and screaming all the way to like 5 to 6x the cost of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, if I was on the buyer side, I would be doing the same thing. So, because you can, like this market is so challenging, and we're getting into the most challenging part of the Chicago market. I think in market in general, but from after Thanksgiving up to January 1, it is essentially kind of like we might as well go take a vacation. That's why a lot of brokers do take a vacation right now.
Yep.
I mean, there are still, interestingly enough, a lot of buyers that are out there, right? We're still getting a lot of inbound. Do you get some more tire kickers right now versus people that maybe are ready to make decisions? Are you seeing that right now?
I think us realtors, we kind of joke that when the families are in town for Thanksgiving and Christmas, they're like, everybody is gathered around. Let's get on Zillow and look at houses
Right.
and make the calls to schedule, even though they're not quite, they're just talking, with their aunt and uncle, I should buy a house. I'm going to buy a house this spring, stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
right.
sometimes there are more tire kickers, so to speak,
Yeah.
this time of year, just because, it's a lot of downtime for people and they have more time to look at houses. And so they might not be totally ready, but
I think, though, one of the biggest things that we have really leaned into, right, is Investa, is that like, okay, cool. If you have a June timeline, great. Well, let's show you if we can find the right place today, right? There's going to be, without a doubt, interest rates are going to come down next year. When interest rates come down, values are going to soar because there's going to be so much more demand coming in. So it's like, why don't you get a good deal now? Yes, you're going to be paying more in interest rate, no doubt about it, right? You could potentially get the buy down to whatever, but you're, without a doubt, like, you're in a higher interest rate market. But also that means there's less competition. Meaning, if you can find the right place, I'm not saying buy anything. If you can find the right place, there's still a lot of good options out there. If you're willing to do a little bit of work or whatever, buy down, get that price down, get a little bit more of an expensive mortgage, ride that value wave up as buyer surge comes through from January to June next year. And then refinance, right? So get a double whammy. You get the increase in value, and then you also get a better interest rate when you refinance. And by the way, our lender refinances you for free.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So I think we've had a lot of good conversations with buyers right now to get them to make a decision. But man, it is very challenging for buyers right now to kind of just get past the negative news, especially the negative news of Chicago, and getting into a place where they're like, you know what, this makes a lot of sense for me because it does, and I'm going to make that decision now. I'm going to buy because it financially makes more sense. And that's why we operate as more investment coaches than, door openers, let's call it. And that's what I think we pride ourselves on. And I know you do such a good job as well because you're so focused on learning and educating your clients and learning what's going on in the market. And I've heard how you speak, and I know the research that you do. With speaking about research, what is the type of research that you do when you're looking to analyze a house?
Definitely, I look on InfoSparks and resources that we have on the MLS to just track values over and try to make not assumptions, but thought out, think about why the market trends happen and why the prices were like that at this certain time. And, that's really study values of properties and things that are happening around the properties, any little information that I can find that explains a value.
I read an interesting article that in the commercial space right now, valuations, that's why it's so challenging to buy a like a high rise right now, is because the valuations are out the door, right? There's this whole work from home flow that's going on, way less workers coming in. So, just like us, we look at the comps in the past to evaluate properties for the future. These high rises are having an issue because they're like, we don't know what the future is going to bring, right? What is this going to be? Because less people need these spaces with the way they were used before. So it's like this reinvention and recalibration, and we're starting to see it, and then bring it back to the residential arena, right? People right now, they don't know how to value properties. They just don't, right? Even brokers. I'm having a conversation right now. I got this like lowball insane number for one of my condos, and I'm like, why would you bring this number to me? I'm like, let's have a conversation about it. And all of her points were not points. They were just like, well, my clients, they just, they see an opportunity in the market, so they want to buy. I'm like, no, like, you need to stop working with them if this is how they're thinking. That's what I told her. I was like, you are not going to sell them a house. Like, outside of this unit, you're never going to sell them a house. Here's how I evaluated my properties, and this is where the number is going. And sure, like I'm representing the seller, right? So I'm going to try to get them a good number. But I also am very realistic and frank that we're not trying to overvalue. Like that was 6, 9, 8 months ago, right?
Yeah.
Now we're like, if I want to sell the place, I need to have it at the right price.
And the property needs to appraise too. And the buyer,
Right.
the seller also wants to get the deal done. So that's why you do the research to price the property
Yeah.
appropriately so that it can appraise and it can close.
Yeah, for sure. When you were in the past market, right? Because I think this is your first Chicago winter, which
Yep.
I don't think it should be that much different in regards to the weather.
No.
Like they both suck.
Yep.
Well, you guys probably had a lot of twinkling lights over there too.
Yep.
I'm sure you probably had even more beautiful holiday decorations.
Yeah.
Because it's like a lot more homes and
Yeah,
whatnot.
homey, yep.
But like, how would you prep for the upcoming market and valuation in times like right now, where like it's kind of up in the air, where like we're pseudo in a downward trend in some areas, but it's going to be coming up. So it's like, how do you make sure to value properties in the right way so that your clients don't overpay?
I would say going on the MLS and finding those past sales and figuring out, making sure that the listing agent is that this home is priced kind of in line with those. They don't have to match exactly, but if we're in the same range and they're in the same ballpark, I would say that's, that I feel good about that. If you had to, and of course it's different on the property, every property is different. Like if you would have to, cause I always like to say, like, when I'm running a CMA for my clients, I like to tell them, like, if you had to sell this property next year because of an emergency, like, are we making sure that we're buying at the right price so that you would not be underwater next year if you had to sell in an emergency or something like that?
Right.
God forbid.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like, you got to remember there's like, 3 or so percent in buying, 7 or so percent in selling. So like, that's a 10% spread, right? So like, you got to be so meticulous. And I always say, you make your money when you buy, not when you sell. So you have to buy right. So people are like, okay, cool. Like I'm starting to understand that. I can't just like go willy nilly where people were like over COVID and now they're like losing all their shirt in the value because they spent $300,000 above asking without any reason behind it. All right. So to finish up, what are you doing to prep for 2024? What are those things that you're doing today to prepare to just crush it next year?
So I would say with the transition from my business in Iowa to here at Vesta, we have a big steady flow of business that's coming in with our online leads that Vesta provides with us. And so that wasn't a big pillar of my business in Iowa. So I am definitely researching and looking for ways researching online and looking for ways to stay organized and with all of those the high influx of online leads that are coming in, and best ways to just stay on top of it, make sure I have a process of communication with all of those leads, and just kind of find ways that I can just stay organized and on top of it and things like that. So. And
why should a buyer work with you, Meaghan, out of everybody else? What is your unique value proposition? What makes Meaghan Meaghan?
I would say why a buyer should work with me, because we have fun. Of course, this is a really big purchase, and it's so many things that can go wrong in a transaction, but you should work with me because I know all of the things that can go wrong in a transaction. I know how to manage expectations and to get a transaction from start to close having fun, and making it memorable so that we will have a relationship past the sale and that you'll want to use me again when you go to sell the property. So
if I can add one thing, your care in your execution is spot on. I mean, like, I see the diligence that you put towards your files, and it is really admirable. So
thank you.
I'm excited to have you part of the team.
Thank you.
You've been doing absolutely amazing. And I'm really excited to watch you grow, Meaghan. Thank you for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Let's go.
Yay.